Welcome to Sew with Monty. Today we are going to concentrate on the bodice section of our armhole peasant dress, which is made from our torso block. We've taken the draping off the form now, where we have made our beautiful neckline, and we're going to transfer this to the front and the back pattern piece, just using a dashed line. I have it taped slightly to the paper so it doesn't move around on me. You can use tape or you're welcome to use a weight. So first I'm going to just do a dashed line around the neckline that I want onto my duplicate torso block. Now note one thing, I've cut open the darts so that this will lay flat, and the darts are previously marked from the torso block copy. So that's going to help us a lot in adjusting this pattern to turn it into a peasant blouse. So the front is marked, and now we're going to mark the back. Once you have it marked, you can remove the muslin and you can cut out the neckline right on the dashed line. Now if the dashed line isn't accurate enough to cut on, you can use your Very curve or your French curve to make it more accurate. So if you're having trouble following this line, just use your Very curve or your French curve to make this accurate. So I'm going to focus on the front today because it has more information because of the dart, and we have to do a dart transfer there. So let's get started. We're going to trim these off right here and make them ready to be changed. So, removing all the muslin, and once you remove the muslin, keep it temporarily. I wouldn't keep it forever, but put it aside just in case you need to refer to it. But once you've gotten past the point of needing that muslin, throw it away because it could get confusing to you and you might pick it up in error and use it for reference in the wrong place. So once you've passed that point, just get rid of it. Now I'm using my scissors to smooth out some of this little dotted line here. I had a little bit of a dip there. So if you see something that looks a little awry, go ahead and clean it up, either with your Very curve or your scissors. Now, before I go forward, what I want to do here, first of all, note my shoulders are not accurate. So I want to line up my armhole, and I'm going to have to fill in this front a little bit so that the back and front line up. So we're going to take a little bit of a scrap here, and I'm just going to put it right back in here. How nice is that? Because it fits perfectly. So we're just going to take a little tape, and I'm going to take this back in here and fill this in so that my shoulder seams are trued, which means they're the same length, and blended, which means that there's a smooth transition between my shoulders. So right here, we want to fill this little section in right there and blend off in this part right there. So I'm just going to adjust this so that it fits to the back and go back to 0 in here. Now we have our front and back neckline are lining up beautifully right here. Okay, so the next part of this is we need to take some measurements. So I'm going to measure the neckline, and I've made a little chart here so that I can put my measurements over here and I don't lose them by writing them on the pattern, because this pattern is going to get diced up and I don't want to lose it in the process. So let's go ahead and measure the front neckline. And sometimes it's a good idea to hold it down with a weight. If you don't have a weight, canned food like little cans of tuna work really well. Small bags of beans actually work for weight, so you don't have to spend a lot of money on weights. This is 9 3/4 for the front neckline. So I'm going to go ahead and write this information in here so that I have it, and I'm going to measure the back neckline. Now we're going to start our pattern manipulation with the front. So let me get the back measured, and then I'll show you what we're going to do from there. 10 5/8 is the back neckline. Now it's in a safe place, so if I need it, I can just refer back to that. So let's start with the front. We're going to lay the back aside and put our measurements over here and bring over the front pattern. So what we want to do here, we want to eliminate this dart. So I'm going to do this to it. I'm going to draw the fold line into the apex, right here. And I'm going to put a line where I would like the dart to be. Now, I don't really want darts anymore. I'm going to add fullness. But I don't want fullness on the side. I want fullness in the neckline. So I want to throw this fullness of this dart into the neckline. So I'm going to come up through here, and I'm going to find a spot that's square to the neckline. Try to keep this square right here. And I'm going to draw a line in the apex so that I can remove this fullness and put it into the neckline. Now the next part is quite simple. You're just going to cut on the fold line of the dart and leave a shy little hinge right at the apex. I'm going to release this point right here. Again, leaving a little hinge at the apex. Whoops, cut through it. That's okay. So you want to hold the apex and put the two dart legs on top of each other. Make sure you do the dart legs on top of each other. And then you're going to tape this section down. So we're going to just tape this down, making sure our dart legs stay on top of each other. If you can successfully keep the hinge at the apex, it makes it a little easier because it holds it for you there. But this works out all right. And if you do cut through it, it's okay. You can still work with it. So now we'll trim off the excess over here on this side seam, because we're gonna visit this as well. And now we have our fullness in the neckline, and we're going to leave this dart because we want the fullness there as well. So we're going to go back, and we're going to now create the sleeve opening. Now, when we first started this drape, we made a note that from the new neckline down, we wanted to create a 7-inch sleeve length. So I'm going to just tape down this section of my pattern with armhole is, because I'm going to turn it now into a T-sleeve. So it's all part of the pattern. It's going to become part of this pattern. So I'm just going to tape down this area right here, a little bit of the side seam as well. Give yourself plenty of working room out here because we're going to change this sleeve. So I'm going to tape all of this down, and the first thing I'm going to do is mark my extended shoulder line to the edge of my sleeve opening. So if I want 7 inches up here, I'm going to start right at the shoulder line from the point of the neckline, and I'm going to draw down 7 inches. Just like this. And then I want to draw a line squared off from that 7-inch point, like this, down here. I want to come down approximately 1 inch into the armhole. I don't want to be right up into the armhole because this is a T-sleeve. And then I want to just gently blend off into my side seam. So I'm going to go ahead and use my French or my Very curve and make a nice little gentle blend. Now, with that being said, you may want to make this line slightly curved, because we're going to open it up in a little bit. So what I'm going to do is come down through here and just curve it out just a wee bit here, so I have a little bit more of an underarm area. And once I have that, I'm just going to blend this off. Now I've come down approximately 1 inch below my original armhole here. So if you have trouble finding that, you can just book your ruler to your side seam and draw it straight out from your underarm, keeping it square to your side seam. And that will get you to the point you need to be here. That's your 1 inch down from your underarm point. That gives you a little bit of flex there because this is going to be part of the bodice, but we don't want it up so tight in the underarm that it binds us, because this is a looser fit. So this is adding fullness for fashion here. So basically this is the template we're going to use to start adding fullness for our neckline. It's such a fun thing to do, and it adds so much impact to your design. Everything doesn't have to be form-fitted to be impressive. Now, if you have a lot of paper under here you don't need, just get rid of it. I don't really need all this. There's no point in cutting around all that because I already have that information on my original pattern. So this is going to be the template that we're going to use to make our bodice. Now we need to measure this as well. So I'm going to measure this opening. So we already measured the neckline. Now we're going to measure this part right here. This is the front armhole, the adjusted front armhole. So it's 6 3/8. So I'm going to go back to my paper, and my front sleeve opening is 6 3/8. Now we need to take one more measurement so that we can complete this process. So give me a moment to pull the skirt up, and then we'll take that measurement and we'll carry on. So the next measurement we need here is the empire line of our skirt. So I've taped the center front with the side front. We're going to focus on the front today so I can show you the details of it. And this measurement right here comes up to 8 1/4. So I'm going to write 8 1/4 here on my paper so that I have all my measurements in one place. So now after we have this, we can remove the skirt and we can go back to the front bodice, and I'll show you how fun this is to create the fullness to make the peasant top. So let's get the skirt out of the way, and I'm going to bring over a blank sheet of paper so that I have working room, and my bodice will lay on top of this. Now, what we want to do with the bodice, I'm going to turn it sideways so it's looking at me. This is the neckline, this is the empire line, and this is the sleeve opening. We have the measurements here of what we actually have. But we want to create 1 3/4 to 1 ratio of shearing in here, which means whatever we have existing, whatever our measurement is, we want to add on 3/4 of that measurement to find out what our total measurements will be in these areas. So for instance, the skirt empire line is 8 1/4, and we're going to multiply that by 3/4, and that's going to give us, we have to add 6 1/8 to this. So 6 1/8 plus 1/4 is 14 3/8. So I'm going to write that measurement on here, and then I'm going to circle it so I don't get confused with the measurement that's already existing. I have 9.75, and I'll just multiply it by 1.75. That'll give me my total. So this one's going to be 17 inches. And, oh, I'm sorry, that's the neckline. 17 inches for the neckline. Let's get that out of there. And then 6 3/8, which is 6.375 times 1.75 is going to give me 11 and not quite an eighth. So we'll put 11 1/8 there, just for good measure. So my sleeve opening will end up being 11 1/8 on the front. My neckline will be 17 inches, and my empire line will be 14 3/8. So let's see what we've got and what we need to come up with. Okay, so now we have our bodice, the adjusted bodice with the armhole adjusted. The dart has been slashed and spread into the neckline, and we now have taken actual measurements of this piece adjusted. So my actual empire line of this is 9 1/4. My sleeve stayed the same at 6 3/8. And my neckline is now 10 1/2. So what I want to do is, my desired measurements are up here in circles. So I want to take my actual measurements and subtract them from my desired measurement to find out how much I need to add in all these places. So I've taken 9 1/4 for my empire line, deducted it from the 14 3/8 that I want, and I need to add 5 1/8 right along here. And then I've taken my neckline, 10 1/2, the adjusted measurement, subtracted it from the neckline I desire, which is 17. That gives me 6 1/2. Did the same with the sleeve, and I need to add 4 7/8 there. So now to do that, I need to come up with my slash lines. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to divide out my lines so that I have just a little bit here in each section. So right in here along this little area here, and I'm going to try to keep it not too much at an angle. It will go at an angle somewhat, but I want to try to keep it as straight as I possibly can and stay in the confines of my neckline and my empire line. I don't want to put slash marks in my shoulder. or my underarm, I'll end up changing the shape of them, or my center front. So all slash marks need to be in there. Now I want to come along here and I want to open up my sleeve area. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to open this sleeve up. Now it's relatively straight, so I really don't need to do a lot of slashes in here. One probably will do it. So here's how we're going to do this. We're going to start by drawing a straight line on the paper. You always want to have a line to book everything to. And then I want to have a line that goes through these pieces. Now it may or may not stay straight, but this helps me keep things in order so that I don't get them out of whack. And then I'm just going to open this up. First I need to calculate how much I need. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces here on this section. And I need to have my on-pier line, I need to add 5 1/8 inches. So I'm going to add approximately 1.25 inches in each one of these. So somewhere around 1.25 inches in each one of these will do that. And then my neckline, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 to pop that up. So I'm going to add in here for my neckline 6.5. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 1.5 inches, and then I'll do a 1/2 inch here. So 1.5 and a 1/2 inch here. So it kind of gives me an idea of what I'm going to be doing. So let's get started. We're going to open this up right here, and we're going to put 1.25 inches at the bottom, like this. And I'm going to do a little bit different so that I don't have to tweak this quite as much. So I'm going to add a little bit more in the shoulder. So I'm going to add another inch in the shoulder right here, because that'll take up the quarter. So that way I can split these evenly 1.5 inches in each section. So I'm going to come over here, actually 1.25 inches. So 1.25 inches right here, and I draw the line. And then I'm going to come over and exceed this line out. Now the reason these lines are so important, it keeps me from having my sections dance around on me. And I can't really book it at the neckline because the neckline is changing its shape. So see, I just place these each 1.25 inches apart. It's just this simple. And it's really fun. It's like working a big puzzle. Once you do the math, and I'm telling you, you need a calculator or your head will explode. So get a calculator handy when you start doing the math. The math is probably the hardest part of this whole thing. But once you have the math and you're using a calculator so you can trust your math, you're going to be fine. Now I'm going to skip over this and put the other fullness right next to this area because I don't really need to go through the dart. I could, but I don't really need to. But I need 1.25 inches at this point. So you see how I'm doing this? I'm bringing it over 1.25 inches right here. And because I drew this line on my pattern, let's extend it out a little bit so we can see it. I drew the line on the pattern and I drew it on my paper. It makes it so much easier to separate these pattern pieces. See? That's really fun. Once you get past the math, it truly is fun. So depend on a calculator, trust it, and you'll be okay. So now the line's going to change a little bit. We've got a little bit of an angle here. So we're going to take it apart here, and I'm going to go right up into the neckline. I'm going to do again 1.25 inches here, 1.25 inches, and I'm going to place it on the line. Now this is 1 3/4 fullness. I suggest that you don't go any fuller than that. I like to err on the full side because I can always take it out, but if I get it too small, it's more difficult to add because you don't really know how much you need to add. So let's keep extending the line. I'm going to draw it all the way out this time. And we're going to take this point and do again another 1.25 inches. So I'm going to come over 1.25 inches, book my line right on top like this. See, by using this line, you're keeping the shape of your pattern the way it should be. You're not going to be up and down and have it twisted and not fitting properly. Now on this one it changes a little bit because I have to add a lot more here than I'm adding here. Now, in retrospect, I may not want to add 1 3/4 in this armhole. I don't want it real poofy, so I'm going to come back and reevaluate that arm. I was going to add 4 7/8 out here, but I think I'm just going to add 3 1/2. because I don't really want this real puffy out here. But I'm still going to add 1.5 inches here. Now this changes a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and draw a line in here so that I have a book line. And then I'm going to cut this off, knowing that I'm going to add 1.5 inches here and 3.5 here. So let's just cut this open like this. And I'm going to take it from this point. I'm going to take this down here and take this down here and slide back over on my workboard a little bit so I have room to work. And then I'm going to add 1.5 inches at this point. So I'm going to come up 1.5 inches and give myself a line. So I want this to touch on this line. And let me draw this line completely through because that's what's going to help keep us balanced. So I want to be here, and then I want to open this one up, keeping that little point right there on. And then I want to have 3.5 down here. So I'm going to pivot it till I have 3.5 between these two and 1.5 inches between this one. So let's go ahead and mark that 3.5 point so that you kind of know where we're at. So now I'm going to place it on the 3.5 line, making sure that I keep this point on my square line. So what I have now is the rough shape of my neckline. Now we have to fix it. It's not perfect yet. So what we want to do is go back in here and we want to find halfway between all of these points. So I want to kind of blend this off like that. So that's going to be my sleeve opening. And then if you notice, I've got dips and peaks. So if I'm here, I want to blend this off so that I'm halfway up on that one and halfway down on this one. So I'm going to come along here and I'm going to shoot for the center of this, like this, and try to keep this blended off so that I keep my line, taking this one off like this. And then the same here, trying to blend these points off. You take a little off of one and add to the other. So this is going to be pretty much like what my neckline looks like. I might take that little hump right out of there. So let me get my berry curve and see if I can take this out. Sometimes you have to kind of get a visual on it. Now the reason this hump is here is because it adds a little fullness for the bust, but I don't know that I want it that full. So I'm going to take it down just a wee bit there. Okay, so I like this line better. So I'm going to stick with this line, go into here. This will be my line out here, so I'll solidify it right here. And I took a little bit off the peak there. I'm going to go into 0 here and back into here. So we're going to solidify this entire line with our berry curve. And then we're going to work on the empire line. So I want to stay square at my center front neck. That's most important. When I come through here, I want a square right here. So that's my neckline. So I just sort of took the middle of these pieces as much as I could and blended off so that I got rid of these tall peaks and just have a smooth transition between all of these little lines. Now I'm going to do the same thing down here. I'm going to start here. I'm going to lower this one a little bit, take a little bit off of this one, go to 0 in the middle, lower this one, take a little bit off that one. And I've got a little bit of a hump here where this dart was, so I'm going to smooth that out. And then these are pretty much straight on. So I just take this line and start making a smooth transition, blending off between these points. And at this point you need, if you don't have a very curve like this where you can extend it for long distances, you may need to have a friend hold a ruler for you and hold it like this. And then you mark along the ruler, and you have to hold it firmly and draw lightly, and you can mark along the ruler. But it does take a second set of hands to do. So now we're almost done with this bodice. Now, below this line, I want to come into just the body. I don't want to mess with my armhole. I want to draw a secondary line here, because we're going to do something different with this once we get this off of here. But I don't want to change my armhole. So I'm going to cut this out. It's a little bit strange to do this, but once you do it and you see how beautiful your garment looks? It's really fun. Just remember, it's the math that's going to get you, but if you have a calculator by your side, you're going to be fine with that as well. So I'm just going to try to, well, I've got it taped down, so I'll just go ahead and go around it. So I'm going to go all the way around the pattern. And what we want to do is we want to add a little fullness in the length of this top too, because we don't want it tight in the length if we're putting all this fullness in the width. So we're going to add another 1/2 inch to the length of the bodice so that it's not skin tight in the length. We don't want it to feel short with all this fullness. So it's a very simple process once we get this cut out. So I'm going to get this all cut out, and then all I'm going to do is slice open this line that I just drew in the bodice area, and I'm going to pop it open and put a 1/2 inch piece of paper in there. So let's get this out of the way. See, here's our beautiful pattern. Let's just take down a few of these little corners so they don't pop up on us. And now I'm going to slide my paper down here, and I'm going to cut open this line right here. So make sure everything's taped down. So that's real important that you don't lose any pieces as you come along through here. So just tape down all your pieces. If you need to, big long pieces are good. Tape, tape, tape. Don't be skimpy with your tape. It's important. All right, so now I'm going to open this up, this little line right here. Okay, and then I'm going to take the top down where I have plenty of room so I don't run out of paper. I don't want to run out of paper in the process. And then once I have it taped down, I'm simply going to measure down a 1/2 inch from this line. And I'm going to use my ruler. Now, if you have one of these see-through rulers, these big long lines, they're 1/2 inch segments. There's 4 of them on here. So I can just book the heavier line just like that. Draw in the line I need. And then I'm going to draw in, oops, I got a little bubble there. I'm going to also draw in my center front line to book this edge so I don't get it twisted. And then I take this little sliver and I tape it down right here. And tape it down in the middle, like this. See, this is a shape you would never have gotten if you just tried to draw it freehand. And that's important to know because you want it to be a nice, clean, accurate shape. So now right here, I want to just blend this off, this little tip, because see, there was an angle there. So I want this line to be like that. Now, I can cut this out, and this is my front bodice. It's very important that you make some sort of notch or mark at center front so that you don't get this lopsided. Same with your skirt. You should have a little notch or mark. This will be on the fold. And that's it. That's your front bodice.